Tuesday, what we do usually is we discuss the Pasha of the week in general, and we try to focus in. The rule in this talk is that anybody who doesn't understand something should stop me right away. Otherwise, a locomotive without disconnected to its cars, there's no point of going. So the idea is to focus in on one or two parts in the Pasha, a little bit deeper, and to be able to draw something for ourselves, something meaningful that would give us an understanding of our own role in life, our own path in life, our own meaning of being Jews. There's room here. Okay. Pashas Korach, as you all know, this is the Pashas Korach, and it's named for the person whose name was Korach, and it relates a truly shocking episode in our history. Moshe Rabbeinu, the Rambam explains that Moshe was different than all other Nevi'im. The Nevi'im, before Moshe, there were many Nevi'im after Moshe.
What's a Nevi'im?
Huh?
What's a Nevi'im?
Novi, a prophet.
Oh.
Nevi'im, a prophet. Everyone knows?
There
are prophets throughout Jewish history, all the way till the second Beis Hamikdash, and then afterwards there were unusual, unique people who also had the capability of nevuah, of prophecy, of speaking in the name of God. And the Rambam explains that although there were many prophets, none were like Moshe. Moshe was unique. As a matter of fact, you will learn at the end of the Torah, it says, "Leikom Novi Eid Yisrael to Moshe." There was no other Novi by Yidden, by the Jewish people, like Moshe. In addition to the level of his nevuah, to the level of his, so to speak, familiarity with Hashem, he spoke to Hashem any time that he needed to. Not like another prophet who needed special preparation, special access. Moshe would knock on the door, so to speak, like you enter a Rav's house, you have a question, okay? This is how the Torah relates several times like this. Moshe said, "Oh, you have a question? Oh, wait a second, let me ask Hashem."
Didn't Yeshua do that too?
So, Moshe was very unique in that respect, that he was able to access Hashem all the time. In addition to that, Moshe was proven to us, so to speak, shown to us, as the Jewish people, as a Novi, as a prophet, in a different way than all other prophets. The Torah tells us about a prophet, that if a prophet comes, he has to prove himself to you that he is a prophet. How does he prove himself? There are many different ways. Simply either that he predicts some future event and it occurs exactly the way he predicted it. or he performs a miracle. And if he does once, twice, 3 times, then you have to accept him as a Navi. Moshe Rabbeinu, his Nevuah, Hashem himself came down on Har Sinai to affirm his Nevuah. As it says by Har Sinai, and by the giving of the Torah, Hashem said, I want the people to hear how I speak to you, so that this will be established forever, that they will believe in you as a Navi, and they will never question anything that you say. This was established by Hashem speaking to Moshe in front of the entire Jewish people, not just a few, but the entire Jewish people. And thus, this is what established the Torah's Moshe Rabbeinu's Torah. Only Moshe can contribute to the Torah. Afterwards, it's not in the same category as Torah's Moshe. Nobody can add to the Torah, nobody can reduce anything, can subtract anything from the Torah. It's a different type of Nevuah. And the Torah's Moshe, the Torah that Moshe gave us in the name of God, this is the eternal Torah and can never change. No matter how times change and the nature of the world changes, the Torah can never change. So that our belief in Moshe was what's called absolute, total, without any residue of doubt, a possibility of question. And here was the most shocking episode. What happened was Korach, he stood up to Moshe. And he actually said, you have done things which are not by God's command. You have done things on your own. And I don't believe that this is in God's, and this you've done in God's way, in God's name. And what is it? What was he arguing about? You learned in Pasha, Korach said that Kol Ho'edo Kulam Kidosh, the entire congregation, every member of the Jewish people, they're all holy. U'besoichem Hashem, and Hashem is amongst them. They all stood at Har Sinai. They all received the Torah. And therefore, they're all equal. And there should not be this kind of denominations, of different levels. Aaron is a Kohen Gadol. Then there were others who are plain Kohanim. Then there are Levi, and then there are plain Yisraelim. There should not be any kind of different denominations. A Kohen can make a korban, so can a Levi, so can a Yisrael. Why? Because they're all holy people. Can bring a korban. Can bring a korban, make a korban. Makriv, I say makriv. Everybody should be equal, which is okay. It's an argument that needs to be attended to, has to be explained. But the shocking thing above all is that he's actually, with this, he's actually arguing with Moshe. And his argument was quite simple. Like he says in the Parsha, in every Jew, and you're all learning this is a prime principle in Chassidus, every Yid has a neshama. Every Yid has a holy neshama. Every Jew has a holy neshama, has a holy soul. So why should there be a difference between one and the other? And Moshe tried to answer him. And what was the answer? The answer is, just like in a day, there is day and night. There is light and dark. Both of these parts of the day and night, light and dark, these both constitute parts of the day, and together they form a day. Makeup. Dark doesn't compare to light. Light is a much superior time to darkness. Superior, higher, a better time, right? And yet, Hashem made light and dark. And that's the way it should be. There has to be, in a day, there has to be light and dark. Cannot be all light, cannot be all dark. Together, this light and dark, they make a whole day. A whole day is not just 24 hours. They make a day a wholesome day. They make a day that has everything that it needs to have. A complete day. Just like in our experience. In our experience, a person needs, the time that we are awake is a practical, is a active and productive time. But if you don't have the time that you rest, then you cannot function properly. So rest is equally important in a person's life. A time when he is inactive is equally important in a person's life than as a time that he is active.
Rabbi?
Yes.
How can you say that it's equally important when you're active? Probably most people are active about 12 hours a day. You're only inactive for 8 hours a day. So if you're inactive for 8 hours a day, how does that equal as many hours as you are awake?
I didn't say it's equal in time. It's equal in importance.
But you accomplish more, I'm just saying that you can accomplish more in the rest of the time than you do.
Okay. Why don't you leave the questions to the end? How's that?
Sorry.
Make a deal? The important message in this is that Moshe was teaching him that he should understand that the way things are to be measured and judged, the value of things, is not based on the individual value of that thing. There is an overall contribution, overall gift that everyone contributes to the general presence, the general being. Just like a human being. A human being has a brain and he has a heart. And he has eyes and ears and a mouth, which occasionally has to keep quiet. And he has hands and feet. He has all kinds of different, 613 different parts. Physical part make up the human being. Nobody will argue against the point that the brain is the most important and the supreme part of the human being. But if a human being consisted exclusively of brain, without a heart, then the human being would be useless. The brain cannot bring life to the feet, cannot bring life to the whole body. The brain does in fact bring life to the person, because the neshama, the soul, rests in the brain. But that's only the initial state. Then you have to bring the soul to the rest of the body and make the body useful and do what the soul needs to do. That occurs only by the cooperation of the heart and of the hands and of the feet and everything else. So if we're going to measure and say, what's more important, the brain or the heart? It is a meaningless question, because neither the brain nor the heart can make a full-fledged human being and can bring a human being to fulfill his purpose in life. The purpose in our lives is to fulfill God's mission, to bring godliness into the world, to represent a godly presence. To be very, very smart, but not be able to translate your wisdom in practice, not be able to engage and get and do things well in the world, is useless. Because there is a godly purpose in the creation. The creation and the Jewish person in the world is not here just to prove that I am better than you. That's meaningless. It's totally meaningless. That's not what our lives consist of. What we are here for is to fulfill a godly mission. And in fulfilling a godly mission, just like in a human being, you have to have every part of the human being, from the brain to the foot, and each one contributes to the whole and makes the whole a wholesome whole. The same is true about the Jewish people. Every individual Yid is not to be judged by what level he is within the Jewish people, how great he is, how small he is. The question is, to what extent does he fulfill his place in the body of the Jewish people, in fulfilling the purpose, the overall purpose, a mission of the Jewish people. And in that respect, like the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya that a tzaddik, which is the highest level that a person can be, and the Beinani, who is the average, the run-of-the-mill person, regular person, they are equally important and equally beloved by Hashem. The Alter Rebbe explains this whole thing at great length. That the person fighting off his Yetzer Hara is accomplishing a great gift to Hashem, sometimes even greater than that of a tzaddik. So this was Korach, who was a great person, so to speak, in terms of his intellect. He was a scholar. He was a well-placed person, and yet he made this very serious error. And the Gemara says, you may have learned it in Rashi, that Korach, to demonstrate, to show Moshe his point, he gathered these 250 men who were scholarly people, and he put on them a talis that is completely of tchelis. Tchelis is one of the ingredients that make up the tzitzis. We don't even have it now, but this is originally the mitzvah of the tzitzis is to have tchelis. So he took a garment that's made completely of tchelis, and he put them on. And they came to Moshe and said, this is a garment of tchelis. Does it need tzitzis? Hayevus b'tzitzis. And Moshe says, yes, it's chayev b'tzitzis. So they started asking him, so what is chayev? It's completely tchelis itself. What does it need tzitzis? What is the implication? What is the point in this? The point in this was that here you have a Jew, a Yid, who has a neshama, and who has an intellect, and who is a scholar. Why does he need to do mitzvahs, tzitzis, small little things? He should be involved in his scholarly involvement, and he doesn't need to do anything else. As a matter of fact, you may be aware, because last week I wasn't here, we didn't talk about the Meraglim. The Meraglim, that was last week. See, this explains that the Meraglim had made a similar argument and a similar error. The Meraglim who didn't want to go to Eretz Yisrael, so see, this explains that their refusal to go to Eretz Yisrael was also based on this similar thing. They said, why we need to go to Eretz Yisrael and start working on the land when we can be here in the desert and learn Torah without any concerns. We can learn Torah, we don't have to get involved in the world. It's much better to be here surrounded by the heavenly clouds and all the miracles. We don't need anything else. So these are, it would seem, valid points, valid arguments. What is missing in all of these arguments? Excuse me? The physical. Right. But it's a valid argument. Spiritual is superior to physical. Just like we say, the brain is superior to the heart. The point that causes these arguments, the error, the misunderstanding, misconception that brings a person to make these kind of arguments is a very important insight that we all have to relate to. And that is that we are here not to fulfill and be great people. We are here to fulfill God's purpose. By fulfilling God's purpose, that's how we become great. This is the greatest accomplishment that we can make. This is the highest level we can reach. It's not measurable in terms of one human being versus another human being. That's not what we're here for. There's an interesting expression in the Hayoim Yoim. You go to Hayoim Yoim, you know the Hayoim Yoim, there's a little booklet. I'm sure you read Hayoim Yoim every day after davening here. It's a little booklet that has a saying for each day of the year that was compiled by the Rebbe, by Rebbe, from the sayings of the Friedrich Rebbe. So one saying over there, it says like this. He speaks about Kabbalah's oil. What Kabbalah's oil means? Kabbalah's oil means a person accepts the yoke, accepts the burden to do what he is told. says that if one has the quality of Kabbalah Soil, even a scholar can reach the madrege of a simple Jew. Do you hear that? Even a scholar can reach the madrege of a simple Jew. A simple Jew who does avodas Hashem because Hashem told him to do that, not because of his own scholastic understanding, not because of his own understanding. That's the highest level. When a simple Jew does a mitzvah, it's Hashem doing the mitzvah through his hands. The scholar, it's his understanding, it's his being, and he becomes greater and so forth. So he says it's possible for a scholar to reach the madrege of purity, of true connection to Hashem, like a simple Jew. It's explained in Chassidus that there is Chochma, Bina, and Das. Chochma, which we translate as wisdom. Bina means understanding. Bina, generally speaking, means the logical process of the mind, of the intellect. And then there is a third faculty, which is also part of the intellect, and that is called Das. Das is something which is very much emphasized in Chassidus, Torah, and it's a little bit of an elusive quality. Elusive means it's hard to pin it down, but it's extremely important that we understand what that Das is. I was once traveling, and I was listening to the radio. It was a scholarly discussion, a scientific discussion. And a young boy calls into this program. And he says, he was discussing some kind of a prehistoric animal. Anybody knows what that means? Some kind of animal that existed, that doesn't exist anymore. Prehistoric animal.
Ancient.
And he was discussing something that they had scientists had recently discovered. And he studied this discovery, and he was asking, says he's interested to understand, can we figure out from this which we've discovered, whether this animal was carnivorous. Carnivorous means that it eats flesh, or that it is, I don't remember exactly the word, that it attacks. It's actually a ferocious, attacks living stuff. But they attacks,
Predator.
A predator or a carnivorous. Okay. And these,
one is synonymous with the other usually.
No, it's not. It's synonymous in terms he eats flesh, but there is the
a scavenger or a predator.
A scavenger. Okay, scavenger or predator. Okay, so he asked this question, and these great scholars in the station who was this was a young kid, and these were mature and highly placed scientists. They were all out of their mind. Wow, what a scholarly question! Wow, mind-boggling! What a great question. You are really due to become a great scholar. And they were completely out of their box. And I'm thinking to myself, tell me, what's the significance of this whole pursuit? What does it mean? What's the meaning of this? What's the value of this? Yes, it takes a lot of brain to figure out from this picture whether he was carnivorous or he was scavenger. But okay, but what does it mean? What's its purpose? You study and you study and you study and you come up with nothing, effectively. You have to understand, this is called das. Das means that you have a sense of value. From all the things that you learn about the world, you learn about Hashem, there's a sense of value. What is it all about? What does it all lead to? What does it accomplish? The human being is in a category by himself, completely different than all other creatures in the world. A unique creature. Animals are all kinds of different animals. They all go into the same category, they're animals. They're what's called smarter animals, low class, higher class. But they're all in the category of animals because everything they do is all instinctive. They don't really know what they're doing. They don't really pre-calculate and understand the purpose and source. The human being is unique. He has a soul, a human soul, an intellectual soul. And this uniqueness has to be properly understood. Here, you're utilizing the uniqueness of the human being, his brain, which is the highest quality in the human being, to figure out something about a prehistoric animal, which is completely meaningless and purposeless in investigation. So you take a human being and you throw him into the dumps, and now he's also meaningless. What is the meaning behind all that? Yes, you can prove that you are smarter than the next guy. But being smarter than the next guy does not bring you closer to any greater meaning in life. The object here is not to be smarter than the other guy, and to be stronger, to be richer. The object is to fulfill an eternal mission, eternal godly mission. And to fulfill a godly mission, that everyone, every Yid, every Jew, is capable 100%. And he does not have to be a Moshe Rabbeinu. He does not have to be an Aaron HaKohen. He does not have to be a Kohen. He does not have to be a Levi. He has to be himself. He has to use his capability. Hashem gave him. And they dedicate them for a purpose. With das. To understand everyone. This is one of the great difficulties, one of the great things that a person, they all have to break through and understand. We are not just individuals for ourselves. We have to recognize that we are part of a godly people. Our people, throughout our history of 3,500 years, have gone through and carried the burden, carried Hashem in the world under all kinds of circumstances. There were very difficult situations. I'm sure you know a little bit, you're all young people, but you know, I'm sure you heard the latest, the most difficult one, probably historically, the Holocaust, God forbid, which is completely beyond human comprehension. But throughout history, the Jewish people moved around the world, throughout Europe, throughout the whole world. They moved from one place to the other. They were destroyed here and they reestablished themselves here, there. The way we have it now is unique, is a new situation. It never was. Never was. And the Jewish people, not for one moment, did they abandon, did they give up their purpose for which they carry, that they are here. Because as a people, they accepted the Torah from Hashem, and as a people, they accepted the duty, the mission that Hashem gave us to bring the Torah to the whole world, and ultimately to illuminate and transform the whole world. And for that, you don't need to be anyone special. You need to be yourself. There's a saying, Rabbi Paltiel was a great chassid, great scholar, but nevertheless, the greater the scholar, the more he knows that there is greater than him. So he said that he is not afraid that he'll come in Gan Eden, he'll come in Olam Haba, that they will ask him, how come you weren't like Avraham Avinu? How come you weren't like Moshe? The only question he's afraid of is they'll ask him, how come you weren't Isaac? How come you did not fulfill and bring out the best that you could be? The best that you could be, this is not just for the purpose of our happiness and being fulfilled. The best that you could be, this is for the purpose of complementing, making whole the Jewish people. Just like in a person, you don't ask the heart, why are you not as smart as the brain? The heart is not supposed to be smart. The heart is supposed to be a warm, it's supposed to be of a different kind. And if the heart becomes all of a sudden smart, and then it says, I need to listen to the brain, I'll do my own thing. What happens to the human being? The heart is not going to accept the inspiration and directive from the brain. It's going to say, I need to reflect and figure out what I want. Then the person falls apart. He has to receive what the brain tells him and then follow through and do what it has to do. So this is what occurred here, and you learned in the Pasha the horrific result, what happened to Korach and what happened to the people that joined him. All of that really is symbolic. What happened to him is not just a plain punishment, but it's symbolic of what his arguments were and what his error was. In simple terms, by joining in the highest and the lowest, by having a Moshe and an Aaron and a Kohen and a Levi, having different levels by Yidden, what happens there is that all the levels combine together and make one whole. And therefore, thereby, the higher level, like the brain, doesn't fly off in the higher levels. It stays down and it gives direction what you should do. The heart, the lower elements of the person don't fall down into the earth. They're held up and they have a purpose. The hands have what to do. The feet have what to do. The brain feeds them. That way, they're all held together in a proper level. When you separate them, and you said the brain should be separate from the heart or from the feet, what happens? The feet fall down to the ground. And that was symbolic in Korach being swallowed up with the ground. He said, if you are going to separate everything, not going to have a connection between Moshe and Aaron and the other people, then what you're going to have is you're going to fall into the ground. That's what happened to Korach. He fell into the ground. The other people were burnt up, which is symbolic of the fact that if the brain does not serve to give direction to the body, then the brain burns up and goes up into the sky, and it cannot stay connected to the world. To summarize and to bring it back to us, something that would give us here both an inspiration and a direction. We have here what we call a limited opportunity. Because people come here, this is what's called a Baal Tshuva Yeshiva. A Baal Tshuva Yeshiva means people who did not start learning Torah from the cradle. They started learning Torah from a certain age. So they have a limited opportunity. And this limited opportunity sometimes can create a feeling of frustration. Frustration, what frustration means? Being disappointed. Because in fact, the chances of becoming a prolific scholar and to know the whole Torah is limited. The possibilities are slim, unless somebody is really a genius, but generally speaking, it's hard to reach because you don't have that much time. And therefore, when a person reflects on this and he starts saying, okay, so what am I going to gain by learning here a year, 2 years, even 3 years? Does that compare to someone who has started from the cradle? At the time he's 24, he's a scholar. And I'm a beginner, relatively speaking. Why am I going to gain? So the answer is, everybody has to understand this. We have to understand that what we are gaining here, what we are accomplishing, just like the Alter Rebbe explains, I'm going off a little bit topic and come back. Alter Rebbe explains that a Beinoni, like mentioned before, a Beinoni is a person who has a Yetzer Hara, and he has to constantly fight his Yetzer Hara. It's a constant fight. Now, a fight is a waste of energy and a waste of time. Why can't I sit and learn without any disturbance? Then I'll be I'll be excelling, I'll be successful. What's the point of me having to fight? It exhausts, it drains me of my energy. Again, the Alter Rebbe explains, you're missing the whole point. The point is not that you should become a scholar. The point is that you should conquer your Yetzer Hara. Because by conquering Yetzer Hara, you are affecting the whole world. You're transforming evil into good. And this is how you're fulfilling the mission of the entire Jewish people. Every time that anyone overcomes his own Yetzer Hara, his own negative feelings, he is actually having a breakthrough, breaking through another aspect of evil, of negativity. It's not just a struggle, a fruitless struggle for himself. Because when he overcomes, when he makes this war, what is the koyach? Where does he get the strength to make the war? The koyach is Hashem is the war. Hashem created the world. Hashem gives me the koyach. I'm doing it because Hashem told me. That brings Hashem into the world. That transforms the world. And it has a very profound and long-term effect. We can't even begin to surmise what we accomplish. I want to give you an illustration. Before the war, before the Second World War, this is going back in 1920s, 30s, times were normal times. The Jewish life flourished in Poland. In Russia it was difficult. But in Poland, in Western Europe, it flourished. There was a lot of yeshivas. Even in Germany, in the 20s, there were a lot of yeshivas. Germany was a beautiful country, Jewish country, very, very rich in Jewish development. There was an interesting idea that was being kind of slowly accepted. And what was the idea? He was kind of digging in throughout the Jewish community, and that is that Yidden, who are religious people who keep Torah mitzvahs, they keep Torah mitzvahs only because of a tradition. And the tradition is tradition. This is how Jews live. This is not because they have intellect, because they're convinced, because they really thought about it and believe it. This is something which is just traditional. Everybody is used to it. This is how children are taught, and this is how they live. Don't necessarily believe in it. And slowly this idea began to take hold in the Jewish community. And many Jewish people who grew up in frum and religious homes started believing it. And then they started going to what was called in those days, I remember the Polish name for the gymnasia. It's called the gymnasia, university, whatever it is. It was permeating the Jewish mind that Judaism, Jewish life, was not a real thing. It was something that you did because of tradition. And this idea was so powerful that Jews that came to America, I don't know if you're familiar with this, Jews that came to America in the beginning of last century, in the teens and 20s and 30s, they would come to America and they were convinced that America is a new world, and here you don't need anything. You don't need the old tradition. There was a famous saying that then the travel was by boat, that the tefillin were thrown overboard of the boat. Modern Islam. This used to happen. People used to come here to America, to the New World, to save themselves from whatever difficulty they had in Europe, and the tefillin went overboard. Why? It's only a tradition. What's the difference? I'm coming to a new country. I'm going to go into a new life. What happened? What happened was Russian Jewry was destroyed by the communists. European Jewry, God forbid, was destroyed by the Nazis. American Jewry didn't have anything. America was a total desert. There was hardly anything here. There were no yeshivas. There was only one yeshiva in America, 2 yeshivas in all of America. You went deeper into America, into the Midwest, into the South, nothing. So American Jewry was completely assimilated. And the Jewish people remained without anything, no basis. After the Second World War, the Jewish people started from scratch. You know what scratch means? From nothing. Starting building Jewish life from nothing. And who were the people that they built with? With the American who were second and third generation Americans, or whatever, from whatever other country that never heard of Yiddishkeit. People who never knew that there's such thing as tefillin, never heard of it. And what happened? The minute they hear about it, the minute they learn about it, they say, "Oh, I understand. I can relate to it. I understand it." In other words, all of that blasphemy, all of that falseness that was creeping in, that Jewish life is only a tradition, it's not a real belief, was proven wrong by our experience. Each one of us here is proving it wrong. Each one of us here is proving that Jewish life and Jewish belief and Jewish understanding is real. That is the value of your accomplishment. And the more we break through, the more the truer and the clearer our understanding, the more profound and the deeper is our accomplishment. Whether you become a scholar or you are a plain religious Jew who is an engineer for all I care, makes no difference. But he is a true Jew. He really believes, he really understands what Jewish life is, understands Torah, understands the purpose of the Jewish people. Not as a tradition, but as a real scholarly truth. That is our accomplishment. So, whatever time each one of us has here, whatever we accomplish is a world transition, a transformation of a world. And as the Rebbe says, this is what's going to bring Mashiach. You're going to transform the world, each one of us in our little way, and bring Mashiach.
Amen.
Okay. This is it for today, gentlemen.
Okay.
said it's the same. Did it actually happen, or
What?
when you said about the tefillin, you said
Yeah.
they're actually tefillin of it's just the same.
No, no.